Hey guys, it's me, Coral. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here today with my wrap up for May. And let me tell you right away, it was not a great month. It didn't turn out too bad once I like to add my pages up and all that, and I hit over 2,000, which is pretty good. But that happened in the first 2.5 weeks of the month, and then the whole rest of the month I could not finish anything. I had a really hard time reading and paying attention to what I was reading, despite liking the books that I was into. So I don't know, it was a weird month. But I did manage to finish 6 books. So in total, I ended up reading 2,272 pages, which is about 73 pages a day. So that's not too bad. I did really good. Like I said, the beginning of the month, it's just the last half, I don't know. I don't know what was up with my brain. I ended up reading 5 books that would be considered adult and 1 that would be considered young adult. I ended up reading 5 horror books and 1 fantasy, and then there was also 5 full-length novels and 1 graphic novel. So, as far as stars go, I had 2 3-star reads, 1 3.5 star, 1 4-star, and 2 5 stars. So it wasn't bad. It was pretty good. Let's get started here. The first book I'd like to talk about was actually sent to me by the author for a review. This was The Bedwetter by Lee Allen Howard, and I thought it was pretty good. Let's see, it's about this young 20-something named Russell. He has kind of a menial job. He works at a kind of animal testing facility. He lives with his sister and her child, and he has a bedwetting problem. This is something that he's had since he was a child. For a while though, it did stop. He was abused when he would wet the bed. His parents would forcefully shave his head. But once he was able to move out of the house, his bedwetting stopped. Until now. Now he's regressed and he's bedwetting again, and he doesn't really know why. But he does also have this kind of, I don't know if fetish is quite the right term, but he's fantasizing about being able to subdue and shave women. And as this urge to do that gets stronger and stronger, his bedwetting problem is getting worse. So like I said, I thought it was a good book. I ended up giving it 3 stars. The thing that got me though was the reason I accepted the copy to review was that in the synopsis it talked about something called the piss fairy. So obviously I was like, what is this? I need to know about it. And unfortunately, the piss fairy doesn't show up until the last, I don't know, third of the book. So, not that it was uninteresting, because it's a really short book. So it's not like I had to spend 400 pages reading this until I got to the part that I found interesting. But there was, a good amount of book that I had to get through to get to the part that I was most excited for. And it seemed like a lot of the stuff in the synopsis here didn't happen until the end of the book. So a lot of it's just his life and this fantasy getting more urgent. I will also say that in the synopsis it mentions something that he did as a child and a teenager, some harm towards animals. So I should have known that it could potentially show up in the book because it mentions it in the synopsis, but I kind of assumed that since they talked about it happening in the past that it wouldn't happen again, and it kind of it makes you think that he's graduated onto bigger and better things, which would be the women that he's fantasizing about. But there were a couple instances of the main character hurting animals. And I'm not trying to be like, ooh, stay away from this. But I, for one, am shamelessly sensitive about that. So I just skipped over those parts. I don't think it took away anything from the story, you know, not reading those couple paragraphs. And it's not like over and over, it's just an instance or two. I feel like that's a fair warning. Don't come after me for being sensitive about that. I am. You can't stop that. I did not reflect that in the rating I gave this book because that was my bad. It was my bad. I should have known. But I feel like it's fair to give that warning to other people that might be sensitive towards that. I also finished the drawing of the 3 this month. This is the second book in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. This is a horror. Well, actually, I counted this as a horror when I did my like run through, but this is more of a fantasy, I would say, just because it does not take place in our world, and it has some like weird like timeline jumping stuff, so maybe even kind of science fiction-y. But this follows the gunslinger and what has happened to Roland after the events in the gunslinger. Like I said, it's the second book in a series. I can't give a good synopsis, but I love this book. This is my second time reading it, and I loved it just as much as I loved it the first time. This was 5 stars for me. I think that if you've read The Gunslinger and you were a little discouraged by it, I think you should definitely try to pick up this one because it is, it's a lot different. It introduces some new characters who are really freaking amazing, and it has giant lobster things. So what more could you ask for? I also finished Jack Ketchum's The Girl Next Door. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. It's about, well, it's based off of a real life case of a girl named Sylvia Likens whose parents left her with a caretaker, and the caretaker ended up abusing her to death. So that's basically what this is about. Some of the events were slightly changed. The main character is somebody who is friends with the family who has been abusing the girl. In this book, her name is Meg. So the main character is friends with the family who is raising Meg, and they hurt her. So that's what this book is about. It's kind of a coming of age story, I guess. Some parts of it were a little tough to read. However, for myself at least, it brought absolutely nothing new to the table. Like, I've heard about the Sylvia Likens case a few times. I've watched a movie based on it, and then I heard that there was a movie based on this too, so I looked that up, and I think I've watched that even. So, like, I've heard about the story so many fucking times, and the book just, it didn't bring anything new to the table. Like, if you've heard about Sylvia Likens, this is like a slightly more toned down version of that story. Still rough. It still made me angry and upset, but I don't know. It wasn't anything new. So I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought the writing was good, but I expected him to kind of embellish on the story a little more than he did, and he just didn't. I also finished one of my star jar picks from April, I think it was. This is Girls Made of Paper and Fire by Natasha Ngan. This is a young adult's fantasy book. I believe it's the start to at least a series, maybe a duology, but there's going to be more books after this, and I'm glad. This is an Asian-inspired book about a world where there are different castes, and it depends on how much demon you have in you. So there's like the top caste that's full demon. There's like a middle caste that's like a human with like demon attributes. and then the lowest caste, which is the paper caste, and that is humans. And the main character of this story is of the paper caste. She's human, and she is taken to be potentially one of the Demon King's concubines. And that is very scary for her. There's a lot of strife in this world. There is potentially a rebellion that the king doesn't want anybody to know about. And there is also a female-female romance in this story. I ended up giving this 4 stars. And I just have to say that there are a lot of young adult books I've read with queer relationships, and it seems like they're written as an afterthought. Like, I'm not gonna... Oh my god, people are gonna thumbs down me for saying this, but I think that some young adult writers, they write a story and then they say, oh, I'd like to make this more diverse, and then they go back and write in that certain characters are queer, and it just doesn't flesh out very well. Like, it doesn't seem organic. And this did. This absolutely felt realistic. It was great. The queer romance in this was great. It felt real. The characters felt real. It gave you like butterflies in your stomach for these characters. And it was just so good. There are some really, and that's not the only reason I gave this 4 stars. I thought that the world building was excellent. I thought there were parts of this that were very sinister. There are sexual assaults that happen off page in this book, and also these girls dealing with that afterwards, you know, the aftermath of that. And I thought it was very tasteful. I thought that I don't know, it was just very well written. And I cannot wait for the next book to come out. The next book I'd like to talk to you about is The Nightmare Girl by Jonathan Janz. I gave this 3 stars. It's about a family who witnesses a child being abused. They end up calling the police, and the police eventually end up taking the child away from his mother, and his mother ends up lighting herself on fire. And eventually you find out that his mother is involved with this like cult. And the cult starts to come after the family who initially reported the woman to the police. This is the 3rd Jonathan Janz book I've read. I think the 3rd. And I think this is probably the 2nd best one that I've read. I'd put it right in the middle. I think that he has good writing. He is so good at like action sequences. Like, it makes you feel like you're watching a movie, which is so great. But there is a large part of this book where I was just like, I don't care all that much about what's happening. I don't know. Try it for yourself. I didn't think it was bad. It just didn't blow my mind. Okay, the last book that I finished this month was Locke and Key by Joe Hill. And this was illustrated by Gabriel Rodriquez. This is a graphic novel, a horror graphic novel. And this was 5 fucking stars. It was so good. And I immediately went to Barnes & Noble to see if they had a copy of the 2nd volume, and they didn't. And then I looked on Amazon and it was like 25 bucks. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna wait on that, which is really disappointing. I wish that they had it because I want to read this right away. I want to read the 2nd one right away. So good. This is the story of 3 siblings, and their parents are killed. And they go to live in the house that their dad grew up in. And it is a really strange house. There are these keys that open different doors in the house, but their uncle is telling them this, but he doesn't really know where the keys are. He kind of maybe thinks that it's something that him and his brother, who was their dad, might have kind of thought up when they were kids. Or they like joke about like, oh yeah, when we were kids, your dad thought he could leave his body and be a ghost and stuff like that. And you find out that maybe that wasn't just something that they made up in their minds as children. And it's good, it's gory. It has a really, really interesting plotline. So I am so excited to get my hands on the second one. I'll have to do that ASAP. All right, and just a little bit about the books that I got into this month. I got about halfway into The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I liked where this was going. I just couldn't sit down and read anything. It wasn't this book. It was like I couldn't pay attention to anything that I was trying to read at one point in the month. So I just decided to put it down, come back to it when I can be fully immersed in it. I'm also currently reading The Nest by Gregory Douglas. I'm really liking this so far, and I plan to, I don't know, get a little bit further into this today, actually. I also, immediately after the season finale of Game of Thrones, picked up A Dance with Dragons. I am almost 200 pages into this, and it's great. I'm liking it already way more than I liked the fourth book, A Feast for Crows, so that's good. However, George R.R. Martin's writing is dense. And I don't mean that in a bad way, I just mean like you have to be sitting and you have to be, at least for me, I have to be in a quiet room. I can't have children, my child, trying to talk to me. I can't have pets trying to like crawl on me. I just have to be able to focus solely on this book. And it's good so far. Like I said, I'm liking it way more than the fourth book, so hopefully I'll be able to finish this month. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll try to rent an audiobook from my library so I can listen to it and read and get it done a little quicker. Yeah, that's what I read in May. When I look at all this, I feel like I did a lot more than I thought I did. I just did a lot at the beginning of the month, I guess. That's all I have for you though. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these, what you thought about them, if you'd like to read any of these. I don't know, just talk to me. Let me know. Let me hear from you. Like I said though, thank you so much for watching, you guys, and I will